Some words don't sound cruel when they're said. They're wrapped in concern, spoken softly, disguised as advice. But they cut deeper than shouting ever could. When my mother called me that afternoon, her voice was calm, almost caring. "Eva," she said gently, "maybe you should skip the baby shower." I laughed at first. I thought she was joking. Then she added the reason. "Your sister's friends are all doctors, specialists. You might feel out of place." Out of place. Not unwanted. Not uninvited. Just unnecessary. She didn't say I embarrassed her. She didn't say I wasn't good enough. She didn't have to. The message was clear. This room is not for you. I hung up the phone and sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. I thought about how often that had happened in my life. Being quietly removed from spaces where I should have belonged. Family dinners where my achievements were skipped. Conversations where my career was summarized in one sentence. Pride that was reserved for someone else. The baby shower went on without me. Soft music. Laughter. Perfect photos. Doctors discussing hospitals. Future plans. Important lives. And me. I stayed home. Not because I didn't matter, but because they believed I didn't. What none of them knew, what not even my mother had bothered to ask, was that while they were planning games and gift tables, I was preparing for something far bigger. A meeting. A decision. A room where real power sat quietly behind polished glass. Because a week later, while they were still riding the joy of that celebration, I would walk into a boardroom. And suddenly, the woman they told to stay home would be the one deciding who stayed employed. Sometimes, life doesn't defend you immediately. It waits. And then it answers. In the loudest silence possible. My name is Eva. And for most of my life, I learned how to stay quiet without being asked. Growing up, my house was always full of voices, but somehow mine never echoed. My parents weren't cruel people. They fed us, educated us, provided everything a good family should. But love in our house came with rankings. And I was never at the top. My sister Lily was born first. She was brilliant from the beginning, or at least, that's how everyone described her. Perfect grades. Perfect posture. Perfect plans. Teachers loved her. Relatives bragged about her. My parents believed in her. And belief, I learned early, is louder than love. When Lily announced she wanted to become a doctor, the house celebrated like a national holiday. My mother cried. My father opened champagne. Relatives started introducing her as future Dr. Lily before she had even entered medical school. And me. I clapped. Quietly. I was good at school too. Not average. Not lazy. Just different. I liked numbers. Strategy. How systems worked. How decisions changed outcomes. While Lily memorized anatomy, I studied patterns, markets, behavior, leadership. But no one ever said, Eva is brilliant. They said, Eva is practical. Eva is independent. Eva is doing her own thing. Which is what people say when they don't quite know how to value you. When I chose business instead of medicine, the disappointment wasn't loud. It was worse. It was subtle. A pause before congratulations. A forced smile. A quick change of topic. My mother said, as long as you're happy. But happiness was never the goal. Pride was. Years passed. Lily moved forward exactly as planned. Medical school, residency, engagement to another doctor. Her life unfolded like a brochure. Mine unfolded quietly. I moved cities. Worked late. Learned fast. I failed. Recovered. Built something slowly. Brick by brick, decision by decision. No applause. No family announcements. Just progress. By the time Lily announced her pregnancy, the family was glowing. A doctor. Married to a doctor. About to become a mother. A perfect story. And then came the baby shower. My mother called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember the moment clearly because nothing seemed wrong. Her voice was gentle. Familiar. Eva, she said, your sister's baby shower is next weekend. I know, I replied. I already saw the invitation. There was a pause. Then she said it. The sentence that would rearrange everything. Maybe you should skip it. I laughed instinctively. What? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. Well, she continued, choosing her words carefully. Lily's friends are all doctors. Hospital people. Specialists. You might feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Not unwanted. Not unimportant. Just out of place. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger. Recognition. Because this wasn't new. This was the same invisible line I had crossed my entire life, where my presence was tolerated, but not celebrated. I'll be fine, I said quietly. My mother sighed. I just don't want you to feel awkward, Eva. And there it was. Concern masquerading as exclusion. After we hung up, I sat on my couch for a long time. The apartment was silent. Too silent. I replayed her words again and again, not to find malice, but to understand truth. And the truth was simple. In her mind, I didn't belong in that room. The baby shower happened without me. I didn't make a scene. I didn't argue. I simply didn't go. The family group chat exploded with photos. Pink decorations. Laughing faces. Doctors in casual clothes, still somehow impressive. My mother smiling like everything was perfect. And Lily, glowing. No one noticed my absence. Or maybe they did, and it just didn't matter enough to mention. That realization hurt more than the invitation ever could. But here's what they didn't know. While they were planning games and gift tables, I was preparing for a board meeting. A meeting that involved their company. A meeting that required authority, discretion, and ownership. Because while I had been invisible to my family, I had not been invisible to the world. The irony wasn't lost on me. They thought I would feel small in a room full of doctors. They never considered what it felt like to be underestimated by the people who raised you. That night, I stood by my window, city lights glowing beneath me, and I made a quiet promise to myself. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Just clarity. I would never beg for a seat at a table again. I would build my own. The day of the baby shower arrived quietly. No alarms. No urgency. Just another Saturday morning. And yet, it felt heavier than most days. I woke up early, even though I had nowhere to go. Sunlight crept through the curtains, soft and warm, mocking the tension sitting in my chest. I lay there for a few moments, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city wake up. Somewhere across town, my family was already moving. Getting dressed. Wrapping gifts. Preparing smiles. Preparing a room I wasn't meant to be in. I reached for my phone without thinking. The family group chat was already active. Pictures of pastel balloons. A table covered in tiny gifts. My sister's name written in gold cursive letters. Can't wait to see everyone today, my aunt wrote. Everyone. Except me. I placed the phone face down on the bed. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't want to watch myself disappear in real time. I made coffee and stood by the kitchen counter, staring at the steam rising from the mug. I thought about all the times I had shown up anyway. Family dinners where conversations stopped when I entered. Events where my career was politely acknowledged, then ignored. Moments where I smiled so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I had learned to make myself small long before anyone asked. Today, I chose not to. Around noon, the photos started coming in waves. My sister Lily, radiant in white. Her friends, doctors, surgeons, residents, laughing effortlessly. My mother beaming like this was the happiest day of her life. And in every photo, something was missing. Not a chair. Not a place setting. A person. I zoomed in on one photo longer than I should have. My mother had her arm around Lily, smiling proudly. I wondered, briefly, if she noticed I wasn't there. If she thought about the phone call. If she questioned her own words. Or if she truly believed she had protected me from discomfort. The truth settled quietly. She hadn't meant to hurt me. She simply hadn't considered me. That realization hurt more than anger ever could. Because anger implies conflict. Indifference implies irrelevance. As the party continued, the group chat buzzed non-stop. Inside jokes, medical humor, photos of ultrasound images held like trophies. Everyone belonged. Everyone fit. I muted the chat. Not out of bitterness. Out of self-respect. Instead, I opened my laptop. The board meeting documents waited for me. Organized, precise, unemotional. Numbers. Contracts. Voting rights. A world where presence was measured by preparation, not pedigree. It was strange. In one room, people celebrated titles. In another, decisions shaped futures. And the people who dismissed me had no idea which room mattered more. That afternoon, my phone rang. My mother. I watched it vibrate on the table. For a long moment, I didn't answer. Not to punish her, but because I needed to decide who I was going to be in this moment. I answered. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was cheerful, almost distracted. "The shower is beautiful," she said. "Lily is so happy." "I'm glad," I replied. A pause. "You would have liked it," she added. "Would I? Or would I have spent the entire afternoon shrinking myself to fit into a room that never made space for me?" "I'm sure," I said calmly. She hesitated, then changed the subject. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just comfort in normalcy. When the call ended, I realized something important. I didn't want an apology. I wanted understanding. And if I wasn't going to get it from my family, I would get it from myself. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the final photos came through. Cake. Hugs. Laughter. Closure. For them. For me, something else began. Clarity. Because exclusion has a way of sharpening focus. It strips away illusions. It forces you to see where you truly stand. They had their celebration. I had my preparation. And while they toasted to the future, I was quietly becoming part of it. In a way none of them expected. There's a strange loneliness that comes from being misunderstood by the people who raised you. Not argued with. Not hated. Just unseen. After the baby shower, life didn't stop. It never does. The world keeps moving, indifferent to private heartbreaks. Monday came. Emails flooded in. Deadlines waited. And I went back to work. My office was quiet that morning. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A clean desk. A city skyline that reminded me how small personal pain can feel against ambition. This was my world. The one my family never asked about. No one ever asked how I built this life. They never asked how many nights I stayed awake learning things no one taught me. They never asked what it felt like to walk into rooms where I had no connections, no safety net, no family name to lean on. They just assumed it happened. Or worse, they assumed it didn't matter. Growing up, success in my family had a very specific face. A white coat. A stethoscope. A title that impressed strangers. Anything else was secondary. When Lily talked about her work, people leaned in. They asked questions. They nodded with admiration. They listened. When I talked about mine, they smiled politely. "That's nice," they'd say. And then they'd move on. So eventually, I stopped talking. Not because I lacked pride, but because explaining your worth to people who've already decided it's limited is exhausting. That Monday, I sat through 3 meetings. In one of them, a senior partner turned to me and said, "Eva, we wouldn't be where we are without your strategy." I thanked him and moved on. No applause. No emotion. Just acknowledgement. That was enough. It always struck me how different validation feels when it comes from competence instead of blood. In my family, love was emotional but conditional. In my work, respect was earned, but solid. During lunch, I checked my phone. A message from my aunt. "Sorry you couldn't make it to the shower." It was very medical. I stared at the screen. Very medical. As if that explained everything. As if exclusion was logical when intelligence wears only one uniform. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. That afternoon, I reviewed documents for the upcoming board meeting. Names jumped out at me. My mother's company. My brother-in-law's division. Familiar faces tied to unfamiliar power dynamics. They still didn't know. They still thought of me as the daughter who chose business. As if that word meant less. As if it meant safe. Predictable. Harmless. I thought about my childhood again. How Lily and I shared a room when we were younger. How she'd study late into the night while I read quietly beside her. Everyone thought she was the driven one. But drive doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it watches. Sometimes it builds. I remembered the first time I failed. A bad investment. A wrong call. I lost money. I lost confidence. And I didn't call home. Because I knew what I'd hear. I told you business was risky. You should have chosen something stable. So I learned alone. Recovered alone. Succeeded alone. That independence shaped me. It made me careful. Precise. Unshakable. By the time my family started comparing doctors at a baby shower, I was signing off on decisions that affected hundreds of jobs. But to them, I was still Eva. The one who did her own thing. That night, I went for a walk. The city buzzed around me, restaurants, laughter, conversations overlapping. People everywhere, each living a life no one else fully understood. And I realized something important. My family's blindness wasn't unique. The world often overlooks quiet competence. It celebrates loud success, visible success, traditional success. I stopped at a red light and watched people cross the street. Everyone assumed something about everyone else. And most of it was wrong. When I got home, I sat at my desk and opened my calendar. The board meeting was in 3 days. I highlighted it. Not because I was nervous, but because I was ready. I didn't need my family's validation. But I wasn't going to hide anymore either. Because when the time came, when I finally walked into that boardroom, they would have to see me. Not as Lily's sister. Not as the other daughter. But as Eva. And for the first time, they wouldn't be able to look away. There are rooms that look ordinary until you understand what happens inside them. Boardrooms are like that. Polished tables. Neutral colors. Quiet authority. But behind those doors, futures bend. Careers rise. Reputations fall. And sometimes, truth finally speaks. The morning of the board meeting arrived quietly. No drama. No warning music. Just another weekday to the world. But for me, it felt like standing at the edge of something irreversible. I woke up before my alarm. Not from anxiety. From readiness. That difference matters. I dressed simply. A tailored blazer. Neutral heels. Hair pulled back. No statement pieces. I didn't need them. The power I carried wasn't visual, it was structural. As I drove to the office, I thought about my mother. How she always believed confidence had to look a certain way. Loud. Assured. Publicly impressive. She never understood my silence. She mistook it for smallness. The building stood tall against the sky. Glass reflecting clouds. A symbol of success, hers, she would say. But today, I wasn't here as her daughter. I was here as something else entirely. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood. Assistants moved quickly, tablets in hand. Everyone had a purpose. No one wasted time. I signed in and waited. That moment, sitting alone before entering, felt strangely peaceful. Because no matter what happened next, I knew exactly who I was. The boardroom doors opened. One by one, people took their seats. Executives, investors, legal advisors. And then, my family. My mother walked in confidently, greeting people she knew. Lily followed, glowing, visibly pregnant, admired. My brother-in-law nodded at familiar faces. They belonged here. Or at least, they thought they did. My mother noticed me last. Her smile froze for half a second. Not anger. Confusion. She leaned toward Lily and whispered something. Lily glanced at me, surprised. Their expressions said it all. Why is she here? I met my mother's eyes. Calm. Unapologetic. Then I looked away. The meeting began. Charts. Numbers. Forecasts. Voices filled the room, confident, practiced. But beneath it all, tension brewed. When my mother spoke, people listened. She was respected. She had earned that. But respect can coexist with blind spots. As discussions moved forward, I noticed something. Decisions were being made based on incomplete understanding. Assumptions. Comfort zones. At one point, a proposal came up. A restructuring plan. My brother-in-law advocated strongly for it. Confident. Persuasive. But flawed. I watched the room nod along. Not because it was correct, but because he sounded certain. I felt it then. That familiar moment. The one where you choose silence or responsibility. I raised my hand. Not dramatically. Just enough. The room paused. Surprised. My mother turned fully toward me now. Her expression unreadable. Yes, the chair said. I spoke clearly. Slowly. No emotion, just facts. I pointed out risks. Hidden liabilities. Market assumptions that didn't hold under pressure. I didn't attack. I analyzed. The room shifted. People leaned forward. Notes were taken. Questions followed. My brother-in-law interrupted once. I responded calmly. With data. That's when it happened. Someone asked. And you are? The pause that followed was heavy. My mother inhaled slightly, as if preparing to explain me. Before she could speak, the chair checked the agenda. Eva, he said, nodding toward me. Our external consultant. External. Consultant. My mother blinked. Once. Twice. The room continued, but nothing felt the same. As discussion deepened, my role became unavoidable. Questions directed at me. Clarifications requested. My voice carried weight. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was simply present. Fully. And slowly, something changed. People stopped looking at me as an interruption. They began seeing me as a contributor. My mother sat straighter. Lily stopped whispering. My brother-in-law grew quieter. By the time the meeting reached its final decision, the restructuring plan had been revised. Significantly. Based largely on my recommendations. The chair summarized. Good work today, he said. Especially you, Eva. Silence. Then polite agreement. The meeting adjourned. Chairs moved. People stood. Conversations resumed. My mother approached me. Slowly. Carefully. As if stepping into unfamiliar territory. I didn't know, she said. Not accusing. Not apologizing. Just stating a fact. I nodded. I know. She searched my face. Maybe for resentment. Maybe for pride. She found neither. Lily stood beside her, uncertain. For the first time, she didn't look superior. Just human. I guess, Lily said softly. I never really asked. No, I replied. You didn't. That wasn't bitterness. That was truth. The room emptied. But something remained. A shift. A crack in the old narrative. For the first time, they didn't see me as less. They saw me as unknown. And that was progress. Because once people realize they don't know you, they have to start listening. The applause was polite. Professional. Controlled. But what followed after the boardroom emptied was far louder than any clapping could have been. Because respect in public is easy. Reckoning in private is not. The hallway outside the boardroom felt longer than usual. People walked past me with nods now. Small acknowledgements. Subtle shifts in body language. The kind that says, we see you differently now. My mother walked beside me. Silent. That silence carried more weight than her lectures ever had. I didn't know you were consulting at this level, she finally said. Her tone was careful. Measured. Not dismissive, but not proud either. Yet. I stopped walking. She stopped too. We stood there, surrounded by glass walls and distant voices. "You never asked," I said quietly. Not angry, just honest. She looked at me then. Really looked. As if she were seeing a person she had lived with for decades, but never fully met. "I thought you were doing something smaller," she admitted. There it was. The truth. Smaller. I didn't flinch. I had made peace with that word a long time ago. "I chose something different," I replied. "Not smaller." She nodded slowly, not agreeing, understanding, which was new. Lily approached us. Her smile was uncertain now. Not the confident glow from the baby shower. Something softer. "I didn't mean to exclude you," she said. Everyone there was from the medical world. I didn't think." "You didn't think I'd belong," I finished. She swallowed. That was answer enough. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Lily surprised me. "You were impressive today," she said. "Not competitive. Not forced. Just sincere." I nodded. "Thank you." That simple exchange did something. It didn't heal everything, but it cracked the wall. Later that evening, I went home alone. The city lights flickered past my windows. I replayed the day, not with pride, but clarity. I hadn't proven myself. I had simply stopped hiding. And that terrified them more than my success ever could. The next few days were different. Calls I used to miss suddenly came through. Messages I never received arrived. My aunt asked what I actually did. My cousin wanted advice. My father, quiet for years, asked me to explain my work over dinner. It wasn't validation I felt. It was recalibration. They were adjusting their internal map of who I was. And maps don't redraw easily. But the real test came a week later. At home. Family dinner. Same table. Same dishes. Different energy. My mother spoke less. Listened more. When Lily talked about pregnancy appointments, people still leaned in. But when I mentioned a project, they stayed. Halfway through dinner, my mother said something unexpected. "You know," she said, addressing the table, "Eva helped restructure a plan that could have cost the company millions." She looked at me, not seeking approval, offering acknowledgement. I felt something shift in my chest. Not relief. Not joy. Something quieter. Recognition. Later that night, as I washed dishes with Lily, she spoke softly. "I always thought being impressive meant people instantly understand you." She smiled sadly. "I think I was wrong." I met her eyes. So did I. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Success doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it arrives with silence. And sometimes, with disbelief. The hardest part isn't becoming capable. It's becoming visible. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the baby shower. About how small I'd felt. About how invisible. And I realized something powerful. They hadn't excluded me because I lacked value. They excluded me because they couldn't categorize me. People fear what they can't label. The board meeting didn't change who I was. It changed what they could no longer deny. And that was only the beginning. Because respect gained late comes with consequences. Respect that arrives late is complicated. It doesn't feel like victory. It doesn't feel like justice. It feels like standing in a room that finally turns quiet after years of talking over you. After the family dinner, things didn't magically become warm. They became cautious. Like everyone was afraid to say the wrong thing now. My mother called more often. Not to lecture. To ask. How was work? What are you working on these days? Questions she had never asked before. At first, I answered briefly. Not out of spite. Out of habit. I had trained myself not to expect curiosity from her. But curiosity, once awakened, doesn't sleep easily. One afternoon, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I almost didn't recognize her expression. No authority. No expectations. Just uncertainty. "I was nearby," she said. A weak excuse. But I let her in. She looked around slowly. The bookshelf. The desk. The framed certificates she had never seen. "You built all this alone," she murmured. Not impressed. Realizing. I poured tea. We sat across from each other. Two women. Not mother and daughter. Not yet. "I think," she said carefully. "I assumed too much." I waited. "I thought if you weren't loud about success, you didn't have it." She laughed quietly. A foolish belief. I didn't interrupt. This wasn't my confession to make. "I wanted Lily to shine," she continued. "And somehow, I decided that meant you had to dim." That sentence hit harder than any insult. Because it was honest. "I didn't dim," I replied. "I just learned to glow quietly." Her eyes filled. She looked away. "I missed a lot, didn't I?" "Yes," I said. Softly. Firmly. Silence stretched between us. But it wasn't empty. It was heavy with things finally named. Meanwhile, Lily was changing too. Not dramatically, but noticeably. She stopped competing. Started asking, "How do you handle pressure? Does it ever feel lonely at the top?" Questions that didn't come from rivalry, but curiosity. I answered honestly, "Yes, often." One evening, she admitted something unexpected. "I was scared of you." I smiled sadly. So was I, for a while. She frowned. "Why?" "Because I didn't want to resent you," I said. "And resentment is easier than honesty." She nodded slowly, understanding more than words could express. At work, things intensified. People wanted more of my time. More input. More leadership. With visibility came expectation. And with expectation, pressure. But pressure had always been my companion. The difference now, I wasn't carrying it silently. During another board interaction, someone said, "We should have involved Eva sooner." I didn't correct them, but I noted it. Because late respect always reveals missed opportunity. At home, my father finally spoke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. "I'm proud of you," he said one night. Simple. Late. But real. I nodded. "I know." That was the moment I understood something important. Forgiveness doesn't mean erasing the past. It means refusing to let it own the future. My family didn't become perfect. They became aware. And awareness is the first step toward accountability. One night, alone on my balcony, city lights below, I reflected. I hadn't changed who I was. I had changed the consequences of ignoring me. Respect that arrives late carries a message. You were always worthy. We were just slow. And from that slowness, I learned patience. But also boundaries. Because recognition is sweet. But self-recognition, that saved me long before they ever noticed. Being seen changes things. Not always for the better. Not always gently. Sometimes, visibility demands payment. After everything shifted, after the boardroom, the family dinner, the late arriving respect, something else followed. Expectation. And expectation is heavier than neglect. Suddenly, I wasn't just Eva anymore. I was the reliable one. The strong one. The one people leaned on without asking if I could carry more. At work, my calendar filled faster than ever. Meetings stacked. Decisions waited. Everyone wanted my perspective. "You have such clarity," they'd say. "You see what others miss." What they didn't see was the weight of being the one who always sees. Late nights returned. But this time, they came with applause during the day and exhaustion at night. At home, my phone rang more too. Family calls. Advice requests. Questions that blurred boundaries. My aunt asked me to review her finances. My cousin wanted career guidance. My brother-in-law wanted help refining proposals. I noticed something unsettling. They had stopped dismissing me. But they had also stopped protecting me. Strength, once recognized, is often exploited. One evening, Lily called me in tears. Pregnancy complications. Fear. Uncertainty. "I don't know who else to talk to," she said. I listened. I supported. I reassured. And afterward, I sat in silence. Because somehow, I had become everyone's anchor. But anchors sink too, if they're never lifted. That realization came sharply one Friday night. I was exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, physically. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Same composed face. Same controlled posture. But behind my eyes, something flickered. Burnout doesn't arrive screaming. It whispers. I took a day off. Rare for me. Necessary. I walked through the city aimlessly. Watched strangers live lives untouched by my responsibilities. And I asked myself a hard question. Who am I when I stop proving myself? The answer scared me. Because so much of my identity had been built around endurance. That night, I made a decision. Boundaries. The next week, when requests came, I paused. I didn't say yes immediately. I didn't explain myself. I evaluated. At work, I delegated. At home, I declined. My mother noticed first. You seem distant, she said. I'm just balanced, I replied. She didn't like that answer. But she respected it. Lily struggled more. She was used to my availability. You've changed, she said once. Yes, I agreed. I've learned. That moment was tense. Growth always is. Because when you stop overgiving, people feel the absence. Even if they benefited unfairly before. One afternoon, my mother surprised me again. I never taught you how to rest, she admitted. I looked at her. And I never learned how to ask permission to exist, I said gently. She nodded. Painful understanding passing between us. At work, a promotion discussion surfaced. Not as a reward. As an expectation. You already function at that level, they said. I negotiated. Not just salary. Support. Team. Balance. For the first time, I didn't accept growth at the cost of self. That decision felt radical. Because for years, survival had trained me to say yes to everything. Now, I was choosing sustainability. And here's the truth no one tells you. Being unseen hurts. But being seen without boundaries breaks you. Strength must be protected. Or it becomes your cage. That night, I stood on my balcony again. City lights below. Wind brushing my face. I wasn't invisible anymore. But I was finally selective. Because respect that arrives late must be met with wisdom. I wasn't here to compensate for lost time. I was here to move forward, intact. And that realization prepared me for the hardest confrontation yet. There comes a moment in every quiet person's life when silence stops being strength and starts becoming self-betrayal. For me, that moment arrived on a Sunday afternoon. Unannounced. Unavoidable. Necessary. My mother asked to see me. Not casually. Not politely. Seriously. We need to talk, she said on the phone. Her voice carried a weight I recognized. The tone she used when something mattered. I agreed. Not because I was ready, but because I was done postponing truth. She came to my apartment again. This time, she didn't look around. Didn't comment. Didn't observe. She Saturday. Straight-backed. Prepared. I've been thinking, she began. I waited. You've changed the family dynamic, she said. Not accusing. Stating. I nodded. Yes. That wasn't fair to Lily, she continued. There was a tension, adjustment, expectations. I felt it then. The familiar pull. The old reflex to apologize. To soften. To shrink. But I didn't. I didn't take anything from her, I said calmly. I stopped giving up myself. Her jaw tightened. You know that wasn't intentional, she said. I know, I replied. But impact doesn't need intention. Silence. Thick. Uncomfortable. Necessary. She exhaled slowly. I spent years protecting Lily, she admitted. And I thought you didn't need protection. That sentence. It explained everything. I didn't, I said. But that doesn't mean I didn't deserve it. Her eyes filled. But she didn't cry. She listened. For a long time, I continued. I thought strength meant not needing anything. Now I know it means choosing what you carry. She looked at me differently then. Not as a daughter who needed guidance, but as a woman who had earned authority over her own life. I don't know how to fix what I missed, she said quietly. You don't have to fix it, I replied. Just don't repeat it. That was the boundary. Clear, firm, kind. Later that day, Lily called. She had heard. Of course she had. Families move information faster than truth. I feel like I'm losing you, she said. Fear naked in her voice. You're not, I replied. But you don't get unlimited access to me anymore. She was quiet. Then, that hurts. I know, I said. But so did being invisible. Another silence. Then something unexpected. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Not competitive. Not comparative. Just honest. That night, I cried. Not because I was sad. Because I was free. Free from explaining. Free from shrinking. Free from proving. I had finally said the thing I avoided my entire life. I matter, even when I'm not useful. At work, the shift was noticeable too. I spoke less. But when I did, it carried intention. People adjusted. Some resisted. Some respected. Leadership noticed. Not my endurance. My clarity. You don't overextend anymore, one colleague said. I finally stopped confusing availability with value, I replied. That sentence stayed with me. Because this was the real transformation. Not success. Not recognition. Self-definition. I wasn't the overlooked daughter anymore. I wasn't the quiet sister. I wasn't the backup strength. I was Eva. And Eva had limits. That weekend, I went away alone. No calls. No obligations. Just air, silence, space. And for the first time in my life, I rested without guilt. Because when you finally face the conversation you fear, you stop fearing yourself. And I knew then. The hardest part was over. What came next would be entirely my choice. After the conversations with my mother and Lily, after the boundaries I had set and enforced, the quiet moments felt heavier. Not with sadness, not with anxiety, but with anticipation. Because the people who underestimated you all your life, sometimes, they take time to catch up. Work became a proving ground again. But this time, I didn't need to prove anything. I only needed to be myself. The board had called a strategy session. A high-stakes discussion involving mergers, acquisitions, and potential layoffs. Everyone assumed they knew who I was in that room. The quiet one. The one who followed directions. The one who had been invisible. They were wrong. When I walked into the room, eyes followed me. Not all of them. Not with admiration. Not yet. Curiosity. Confusion. Recognition of unfamiliar authority. The first challenge appeared immediately. A senior executive, confident, dismissive, spoke first. I think the proposal is solid. It's a safe approach, he said. Safe. Comforting. Unambitious. People nodded. Except me. I raised my hand. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Simply. Clearly. I have concerns, I said. Several scenarios haven't been accounted for. And if we proceed without adjusting, the outcome could be disastrous. A silence fell. And it was the kind of silence that demands attention. They weren't used to someone challenging the safe path. Especially not me. Charts were pulled up. Numbers examined. Assumptions questioned. And slowly, the room shifted. I spoke calmly, data-driven, precise. Not defensive. Not arrogant. Just informed. Questions came. Challenges followed. I answered each. Not with ego, but with clarity. Some eyes widened. Some leaned back. Some turned toward my mother. She noticed too. Not shocked. Not angry. Simply realizing. She realized she had never known me. And in that realization, the first crack in the old family narrative formed. By the end of the session, The plan had been revised. Significantly. Because of my input. The chair of the board looked directly at me. "Eva," he said. "We need you more often. Your analysis, it's indispensable." The words weren't just acknowledgement. They were validation in its rawest form. And then came the moment I had waited for. Though I didn't expect it to feel like this. My mother approached me afterward. Her face a mix of pride, shock, and awe. "I had no idea," she whispered. I nodded. "I never asked you to notice. I just expected to be counted." She blinked. "I thought you were quiet, reserved, safe, less capable than Lily." I smiled faintly. "And that's exactly why I had to prove it, not to you, but to myself." Lily came next. Her expression unreadable. But vulnerability shone through. "I feel like I've missed seeing who you really are," she admitted. "I always thought you were just quiet." "Quiet is different from invisible," I said softly. "And I was never invisible to the right people." By the end of that day, the room had changed. Not dramatically, not magically, but subtly. The people who dismissed me could no longer ignore me. At home later, I reflected on the shift. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about superiority. It was about finally being seen as I was. Strong, capable, intelligent, and unshakable. I realized that recognition, when earned, feels heavier than neglect. Because it carries responsibility. I thought about all the times I had stayed quiet. All the moments I had stepped back to let others shine. All the family dinners where my presence was tolerated but my accomplishments were invisible. And I felt complete. Not triumphant. Not vindicated. Complete. Because the room that once dismissed me, that assumed I was just a quiet girl, had to reckon with the fact that I was something entirely different. I had finally crossed the threshold. From overlooked daughter, quiet sister, underestimated professional, to someone who demanded attention simply by being competent, confident, and unapologetically herself. The lesson was clear. People can underestimate you. They can exclude you. They can ignore you. But your value is determined by yourself, not by the applause you receive. That night, I sat alone. City lights flickering below my window, thinking about the baby shower, the boardroom, and everything in between. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to prove myself to anyone. I had proven it to the only person who ever mattered, me. And that, I realized, is where true power begins. The final part of any journey isn't always explosive. Sometimes it's quiet, measured, decisive. After the boardroom revelations, after the late respect, after boundaries set and enforced, a new reality emerged. For the first time, I walked into a room without any need to justify my existence. No one expected less. No one assumed my silence meant weakness. No one doubted my competence. It was liberating, terrifying, exhilarating. I had a meeting scheduled. High stakes, major investments. People who had underestimated me before were now watching intently. The executive team presented their plan. Figures, projections, and assumptions. They were confident, certain, comfortable. I smiled faintly. Comfortable is dangerous. When I spoke, it was calm, precise, calculated. No hesitation. No defensiveness. Only truth. I highlighted weaknesses, exposed risks, proposed improvements that even the most confident in the room hadn't considered. The room shifted again. This was different from part 9. Now, everyone was listening, not just because of respect. Because ignoring me could no longer be an option. The chair of the board looked at me. "Eva," he said, "your insight changes the way we move forward. We'll adopt your strategy." I nodded. Not triumphantly. Not arrogantly. Simply acknowledging reality. After the meeting, I left the boardroom slowly. The air felt lighter, but I knew the impact would linger. At home that evening, my family gathered. My mother approached me first. No lectures. No hesitations. Just quiet acknowledgement. You were right, she said. Not proud. Not apologetic. Simply acknowledging the truth. Lily followed. Her expression a mix of admiration and humility. I never realized how capable you were, she admitted. I thought quiet meant easy. I was wrong. I smiled softly. Quiet is not easy, I said. It's preparation. My father, usually reserved, spoke. I'm proud of you, he said simply. No qualifiers. No comparisons. It struck me then how simple recognition can heal old wounds. Not erase them, but begin to repair the cracks. Later that night, I reflected on everything. The baby shower I skipped. The boundaries I set. The boardroom victories. The respect finally earned. It all led here. Not to fame. Not to validation. Not to revenge. But to understanding. I had learned 3 important truths. Value yourself first. No one else's recognition can replace self-respect. Boundaries protect strength. Without them, even recognition can consume you. Visibility is earned, not granted. People will catch up to you eventually, but don't wait for them. The day had changed me. Not because others finally saw me, but because I finally understood my own worth. I sat by the window. City lights flickered beneath me, and I smiled. For the first time, I felt complete. Because Eva was no longer the overlooked daughter. No longer the quiet sister. No longer the underestimated professional. She was herself. Entirely. Independently. Unapologetically. And that was the greatest victory of all. As I sit back and reflect on everything that happened, I realize that life isn't about the moments people include you in, but the moments you claim for yourself. The baby shower I wasn't invited to. The family gatherings where I was overlooked. The assumptions about who I was and what I could do. All of it shaped me in ways they could never understand. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was aware. And awareness is far more powerful than resentment. The boardroom battles, the conversations with my mother and sister, the moments of quiet victory, they taught me something essential. You don't need the world to notice your strength. You just need to know it exists. Recognition is fleeting. Validation is temporary. But self-respect, that lasts a lifetime. I learned to set boundaries. I learned to protect my energy. I learned that being seen isn't just about others noticing you. It's about allowing yourself to be fully known. There is a strange power in finally being understood. Not by everyone, but by yourself. I am no longer the invisible daughter, the quiet sister, or the underestimated professional. I am Eva. Entirely. Unapologetically. Without compromise. And in that truth, I found freedom. Life will continue. People will continue to misjudge. Doors will open and close. Opportunities will appear and disappear. But now I face them knowing one thing. My value isn't determined by who notices me first. It's determined by how fully I claim my own power. The hardest part wasn't proving them wrong. The hardest part was proving to myself that I was never wrong. And that is the lesson I carry forward. Be visible. Be heard. Be respected. Not because the world demands it, but because you owe it to yourself. When the applause fades, when the conversation's quiet, when the world moves on, your self-worth remains. And that is everything.